we had a trimmer, and the trimmer had latex gloves on, which most trimmers would use. And during the trimming process, he would palm a bud in his hand. And then he would pull his glove off and he would throw the glove in the trash. He didn't care who took the trash out, and he'd do it all day long. But at night, because they had a poor waste disposal program, there shouldn't have been any cannabis in the trash that he was throwing stuff in. They weren't required to follow any cannabis waste disposal. This was just straight out trash. He would just go dumpster dive at 2 o'clock in the morning and pull out black trash bags full of cannabis products. And this went on for quite some time. And the way we found out is that another person who worked with him actually turned them in because they didn't want to be involved with people that were stealing.
Welcome to How to Flourish in Cannabis. I'm your host, Brian Weber. Our topic today, 5 security concerns for cannabis supply chain. How to Flourish in Cannabis is an educational-focused show with experienced leaders in regulated cannabis. Our guests have a wide range of industry experience in law, insurance, real estate, and today, cannabis security. There's no pitches here. This is designed to be a masterclass in regulated cannabis. How to Flourish in Cannabis is our effort to elevate and educate. I am so pleased to have our guest today, Tony Gallo, CEO, co-founder of Sapphire Risk. You have seen him undoubtedly at every conference you've ever been to, even ones on opposite sides of the country. The man is 1K platinum. People at American Airlines know his name by heart. Thank you for joining us today. And not even just American Airlines, but you guys have been prolific in being all over the country, speaking a lot, and really elevating the cause of preventative security in cannabis. So thank you for coming on, sharing your expertise with us today. For the one person watching who doesn't know who you are, if we could just give a little bit primer of where you came from, and then why you started Sapphire Risk and the passions for the cannabis industry.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show today. So Sapphire is the oldest national security consulting company in the cannabis industry. Oldest. In August, we celebrated our 11th year anniversary in cannabis. So you can imagine in cannabis age, I'm pretty old at this point. And in that time, we've worked in 37 states, about 800 clients, and we do 3 things in the cannabis industry. We help clients when it comes to their license and getting their license through the application process, focusing on the security section. Did about 100 city council meetings throughout the United States last year and presenting that security plan to get approval for the client to move forward with their grow or manufacturing facilities. Second thing we do is we design the security for these facilities. We just proud to open our 160th location in the United States. Our biggest grow was a 450,000 square foot grow facility in Nevada. In fact, we put in over 105,000 plants in the ground, and it was considered a drug cartel, believe it or not, by federal law. So it was very interesting to be working for the cartel at one time.
There's a life goal we didn't even know we wanted. Now we have it.
Exactly. I didn't even know it was a federal law until someone pointed that out, that that we are considered a cartel because we meet the standards of that. And when we say design, we design the video, the alarms, the access control. Think of us like a security architect more so than an installer, because we don't install the equipment, but we'll recommend it and work within budget. And then the third is kind of the most important thing, and kind of why I wanted to be on this call today, is to talk about the policies and the procedures, the day-to-day procedures of running a cultivation, a delivery, a manufacturing, a processing facility, and how that's important for running the business and expanding the business. That's one of the things that I see a lot in when these facilities fail is the missing of the focus on the profit and the margins from there, and where is that loss is occurring from. So we're pretty hands-on with that. We'll work with the boots on the ground, as I call it, the guard agencies that are there, but really developing those procedures, the day-to-day procedures of being profitable.
And that's why I really wanted to have you on today, because like this show is all about education and actionable insights. And, you have stories for days. Being a guy from Jersey, stories for days. Every time I run into you, it's another story, and I love them all. But I always learn something from them. And we met up recently at a NECAN down in AC. Again, more stories, but I always take away a lesson of learning from these things. And I just wanted you to share some of that with your audience today, that you can take action watching today, Mr. or Mrs. Cultivator, grower, manufacturer, distributor. And like the bulk of Tony's business, and I know is really with dispensaries, but, Flourish being very heavy in supply chain and obviously also having a retail exposure, I wanted to shed some knowledge and some light onto some of the supply chain issues. We'll do another show for retail. Please like, subscribe, and follow below so you don't miss that one. But let's get into this today. Like, we'll just start off from the beginning of the plant. What is the biggest risk for cultivation facilities?
It's funny. We've opened up. Like I said, we've opened 160 locations. I would say, like you said, a majority of them are just dispensaries and retail, but a good amount of them, I would say about 60 of them, have been growing and manufacturing. And a lot of the focus from security is kind of misguided in a lot of ways. I've been in the retail security field over 25 years. I worked for Macy's, I worked for Sears, I worked for various other companies, auto parts chains and all of that. And a lot of the focus, again, in retail is people breaking into your location or driving a car into your location or coming in through the roof and stealing plants and robbing you in broad daylight or robbing you at night. And the funny thing is 80 to 90% of all the losses in a cultivation facility are internal. Very few cultivation facilities that have adequate security really ever experience an external attack. And if they did, even to that point, if you think about it, if I have a grow facility and I have several flower rooms and someone breached my flower room and they pulled 3 plants or 5 plants out of the ground, where is my bigger exposure? Is it that, or is it my secured storage room where I have the bag of processed buds already that are sitting there ready to go out to a dispensary? Where would you rather incur that loss? So I think a lot of that is misplaced focus when it comes to designing the security for a facility like that.
Okay, so there's probably 2 things we could take away from that one, just to maybe some focus, some discussion points on. But like, really, it's not even just the cultivation part, but it is the secured storage room that you really want to like focus a lot of your concerns on.
Sure. So if you ask me, where do I want to secure my cultivation facility, my manufacturing facility? We call it a secured storage room. Where the finished product that is going to be kept until it winds up going out to a retail or a dispensary. That's where I want to put my best security. That's where I put my tightest security. And whether the walls are 9-gauge wire meshing, whether the walls are cinder block, whether they're the alarm system, whatever. My biggest losses, though, don't come from that room. My biggest exposures in that room, my biggest losses come from the trim room.
So tell me a little bit more about that. You shared a story right before we started recording on this one, but I thought it was, I never even thought about somebody would actually even go through these lengths, but like it's a thing.
Well, think about the trim room and who comes in and how your exposure is, whether you hire people that you've known and have worked in the trim room. And, obviously the trim is where you make those buds look pretty is the best way I explain it. And that's where the product is. That's where the best exposure to someone having their hands on that product. That you can go into these grow rooms, but the amount of exposure in those trim rooms are greatly bigger than it would be in, say, one flower room. And the policies and procedures that need to be put in place, the security that needs to be put in place, but more important, the communication that's lacking in that room of, we call it culture of honesty. And that's one of our phase 3, as I said, where we design this culture of honesty, where we want to communicate to people is, hey, we don't want you doing anything stupid. We don't want you doing something that you normally would never do, and taking a bud home. We're trying to take some of the product home at the end of the night, trying to conceal it. And, we found this product in the bathrooms where the trimmer was, up in the ceiling, bags of that stuff. I told you my story about the poor policies and procedures when it comes to exposing yourself.
You want to share that one with the audience? Because I found that really, I'd never even thought about someone doing that.
So we were talking earlier, you and I, about like what's my best story or what's my most unique story. And the one goes back where we had a bud tender, a trimmer, and the trimmer had latex gloves on, which most trimmers would use. And during the trimming process, he would palm a bud in his hand, and then he would pull his glove off, and he would throw the glove in the trash. He didn't care who took the trash out, and he'd do it all day long. But at night, because they had a poor waste disposal program, because there shouldn't have been any cannabis in the trash that he was throwing stuff in, they weren't required to follow any cannabis waste disposal. This was just straight out trash. He would just go dumpster dive at 2 o'clock in the morning and pull out black trash bags full of cannabis products. And this went on for quite some time. And the way we found out is that another person who worked with him actually turned him in because they didn't want to be involved with people that were stealing. And, it was that culture of honesty that came into play. Or the owner would have never known that because they weren't looking there.
Not looking there. No, there's no cameras in the count room, I'm assuming as well. So, or if you're actually going to look and catch those things. So interesting. Okay. So what was I don't want to get too specific on the show, but like what would be a security fix for something like that?
Well, I think that, again, I go back to my retail days and working in department stores and all of that. And I think a lot of it has to be started with how do you communicate your security and what you expect from your employees. And let's just talk about employee honesty, and then we can talk about physical security. But employee honesty, if you allow someone to take product home, cannabis buds home, or you're the master grower, the grower, it can take something home, or you really don't have focus and the floor is littered with, cannabis products, or you're communicating the way I talk about it in retail. A company I worked with prior to starting Sapphire, we had experienced a lot of armed robberies, and unfortunately in the retail field, where the armed robbery starts is in the parking lot. And I call it, if you allow graffiti on your walls, if you allow the parking lot to be dirty, you're sending that message. Same thing with anything, grow. Cultivation, manufacturing, delivery. If you send that message that you don't care about your facility, then other people aren't going to care. There's Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called The Broken Window Theory. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Broken window theory being that, if you walk by a building and you would never throw a rock and break someone's window. But if you go by the building and there's several windows that have been broken, you might be more inclined to pick up a rock also and throw and break that window. Same thing that we express in the grow facilities. I see grow facilities and cultivation facilities, and for whatever reason, they decided they're going to have 150 cameras. I see a cultivation facility with 150 cameras. I immediately know they have a poor security design because there's too many cameras. You've made that security install very happy. He's going to send you a Christmas card, but nobody will ever watch 150 cameras. Now,
is that reactive security versus proactive security?
I think a lot of it has to be where a lot of these owners just don't understand security and what they're trying to achieve with that. So they feel, hey, I know my facility should cost X amount of dollars, $100,000 to do the security, but I have a $300,000 security setup. Well, that doesn't mean you have a better. You just spent $200,000 more, and I see that all the time. And a lot of times I just shake my head and I go, you have 150 cameras. Let's take 50 of them away and give yourself a really robust, good security system, because no one's looking at that 150. Or even worse, then you start having cameras that go down, and then people see that you don't look at the cameras because now some of these cameras have gone down. So it's not more is better. And a lot of security installers will, because that's what they sell, or equipment companies will sell. they want to give you more access control devices or more alarm systems or all of that kind of stuff. But the chances of someone coming down through the roof like Mission Impossible does, or driving a car into your grow or into your manufacturing, compared to the employee that's actually going to steal a product, is so minimal that it's just not the right approach.
I like that. So start with very first principles of like set a culture of we are running an honest corporation and like stealing is just not an acceptable thing here. So I like that. I like that. That's a good one to start with. That is a very foundational thing, and don't be as much to the chagrin of camera sellers and installers out there. But this is the smart way to doing it. One other point that we had on here was related toward the secured storage room, whether it's a pure manufacturing play or part of a cultivation facility that has some manufacturing elements on that. You had listed a number of concerns with that one. Do you want to share some of those with the audience?
Sure. So the secured storage room is where you keep all of your gold, all of your diamonds. That's the location. All of your hard work, from clones to mother plants to the grows. Whether you have a 2-grow room facility, a 2-flower room facility, or 20 flower rooms facility, everything winds up in that secured storage room, which is the room that has the finished product, and it's going to eventually be sold. Comes from the dry room, comes from the trim room, wherever. But you wind up in that secured storage room. That is where all your eggs are, and that's where your physical security needs to be. There needs to be a good access control on that door. It needs to be a good door. Not a wooden door. I've seen grow facilities where they've had a metal door, a good door, next to a sheetrock wall, and people broke through the sheetrock, and that's how they got into the room and stole $40,000 worth of product. So not only does the door need to be secure, not only does the frame need to be secure in the lock, but the walls itself need to have some level of security on it. Even if you're using foam walls, or even if you're using insulated walls, I recommend and I like, and we use it throughout the United States, is 9-gauge wire meshing. I think it's a much more cost efficient. It's the wire meshing you would see in a prison, on like a cinder block. Where some people like to spend thousands of dollars with a cinder block wall, then they put rebarb in it, and from rebarb they put concrete in it, and now you got yourself a very heavy wall where you can go for a fraction of the cost, go to a wire meshing environment. I've seen people that have used vaults, which are very expensive, like a bank vault type of would be.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I've seen them, in Connecticut, that was very prevalent, where there were people that were building, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 vault environments using vault panels, which are great ideas. But then I've gone on the other end where I've seen people use plywood. Now, first of all, from a grow point of view, the grower must be dying, because you don't want to use plywood, in your room anyway. You don't want to use, like the sheetrock or something like that. But, again, when you look at that facility and you focus, where's your focus going to be? A lot of people are focusing on cameras throughout the flower rooms, more so than saying, what is my secured storage room is, where all my gold is going to be placed. And that's kind of the value of that.
Think of the dragon watching that gold just sitting there. They're there. How do you protect that one? Although the dragon has no use for the gold, your employees do have use for finished products, or would be assailants as well. So, okay, focus on that and just be mindful of the whole picture and not just part of the picture. So I think that's probably the two takeaways of that one. That's an interesting story. They just broke in right through the drywall, didn't they? Okay. Another big physical risk of this, it's not just theft here, but also like a security risk to like the facility and your employees, especially in manufacturing, is the C1, D1, D2 rooms as well. And I know we touched upon that. So it's not just theft. It's not just armed robberies coming in or employee theft. It is making sure your building doesn't blow up. Let's talk about that.
One of the components that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle throughout the build out is the safety program. There are certain things that you have to do There are certain requirements that maybe OSHA doesn't have a hand in, but they're OSHA requirements just the same, especially if you're a manufacturer and you use inflammable liquid in your extraction process. There are rooms that are called C1D1 or C1D2 rooms where it basically constructed in a way to prevent if there was an explosion that the whole building would be damaged, and the safety of those individuals. I call it like being in a submarine. If you ever seen one, look it up online. The structure of that and the safety and the safety about it. Take the security part where the theft is, but going back to that, those jars can be worth $20,000, $30,000, if not more, of product that's sitting in a big peanut butter jar size, or a big, not even a gallon jar. And meanwhile, a lot of the owners are looking somewhere else. Oh, I keep it in the refrigerator. The refrigerator is not locked. But look, I have all these cameras in the hallway. Well, I know, but you have $30,000. Would you leave $30,000 in a physical jar and several of those jars throughout there? So, the importance not only from a safety, which is what we just talked about, and making sure that not only do you have an emergency program. So in California, we did a lot of grows in California. The majority of our cultivation and manufacturing we did in Southern California, from Desert Hot Springs all the way to Los Angeles. You got to have earthquake procedures. What happens if there's an earthquake? How do you react to that, especially if you're using flammable liquid? What do you do if you're in Florida if a hurricane hits? What happens if you're in Oklahoma if there's a tornado? What is those emergency procedures? And a lot of times, I'll talk to the people that work there. They don't even know where the fire extinguishers are. Or they've never been taught is there a location? Let's say you had to evacuate. Where do you go? What's that staging? Is it in the parking lot, 50 yards away that you meet? Where do you meet? And where are those procedures put in place? And a lot of times, those employees aren't told that. And that kind of adds to that culture that we're talking about. Because you didn't take the time and effort to help me understand how I'm going to be safe, where the latex gloves are, when do I need to wear a mask, what can I not have, what shouldn't I have, common things. Where's the defibrillator? Where is the first aid kit? What are you telling me as an employee? That I don't matter? That's not important? And it's not the owner. Most of the owners do care and do want you to be part of this family, because that's what you need in any facility. You want to foster this family relationship. But from a safety point of view, what tools have you ever given me?
I actually got to follow up on that one and ask for some insights, because I know we did it in school, all those things, and most workplaces I've worked at have had those procedures, and there'd be training days and those kind of things. What do you feel like the symptom of that is here with cannabis? Are we just startups in a startup industry, and we're focusing on really just the economics of the business? I know this is a tangentiary to economics, but is it just we are focusing here on the products, and these things are ancillary items that might not get the service a day, and it really comes from the culture of the owners or the people who operate the business? Is that correct?
No, I think I see a lot of the owners that have very good focus and want to be successful, whether I call them legacy, whether they were doing something in the black market, which now legacy or not. Do you have MSDS sheets, which is the material safety data sheets that you should have to explain what liquids you have in there and how to handle that? I think a lot of it is that the owners focus sometimes on how to be profitable, how to focus on the bottom line, put some work on their operations manager. Most of the time, the security and the safety programs fall into operations. We do what's called fractional security. We work for a lot of companies where we're their security director because they can't afford a security director. We act as that. And we come into play and we help shore up that particular component. But I've worked with some very large companies that don't have that fractional security, doesn't have really anyone who does safety and security, but they have the operations manager, and he gets that added burden on that. So I think sometimes it's just the pecking order of, where's your focus going to be today? And eventually you're going to get to this, but sometimes you don't. And again, when there's an emergency, you can't go into the training mode at that point. You need to be able to.
No, that's too late. That's what you've been preparing for. But those are some great examples, especially around the country. But like, there's other examples that can happen everywhere. So be mindful of those.
Think about it from a business point of view. You have a location where there's a fire or smoke or something, flammable liquid, or the light bulb blows out or something like that. Let's say that everything goes really well and you had a minor fire in that grow room. The whole product is pretty much toasted, though, isn't it? And, sometimes people don't realize that, maybe that, that piece of plastic that burned because someone wasn't following safety procedures. No one got injured, no one got hurt, but you've just lost $100,000 worth of product because you can't sell it.
Yep. That's very expensive. That is very expensive right there. So those all matters. It does feed the bottom line, and not just, from being nice to your employees. It's about being nice to the business and making sure that's survival. So that's rather important. The one last talking point that we had was when product leaves the facility. So you got your cultivation facility, manufacturing facility, or distribution, and it's time to deliver it to your customers, which are dispensaries. There's a lot of risk right there. Let's talk about some of those things, Tony.
Well, think about that. You're taking those eggs that I talked, those golden eggs, and you're putting it in a vehicle, and the golden egg is leaving the house, and now they're going to go down the road, and the road's public. And what is the procedures to, we talk about in retail, we have the pizza model and the ice cream truck model for when you go from business to consumer. Here we have business to business. And what is the truck and how is it leaving and what kind of security do you have? Some states require video or whatever. What happens if the driver leaves the path they're supposed to do? Is there a geofence on him? Are you able to track where he is? What if he gets a flat tire? What if he gets into a car accident? What if it just breaks down? What's the procedure to get that product out of the vehicle? What is the procedure when they leave and go to do delivery? How is that delivery going to be done? There's a lot of exposure at that point. There's a lot of times, we used to do work with armored cars, Brinks and Garda and all of them. You're delivering money to a bank. There's an exposure because you have money, bags of money. I'm delivering bags of cannabis or even worse, jars of manufacturing products. I'm bringing that to a facility. When I pull up to the facility that maybe the bad guy knows that they're a manufacturer, or they're going to be using whatever you just manufactured to do something with, or they're a dispensary. That exposure at the time I open that door, what happens? Does that individual get jumped? How does Amazon and how does FedEx and how does UPS? They have their problems too. Why would you not think you would have the problem? And again, that goes back to that procedure. What is the procedure if your driver on his way from your grow facility to a dispensary, let's say, gets a flat tire?
Everything's got to be breaks down, anything else. Every kind of contingency plan has to be mapped out and it has to be communicated to the people and known there. So I think it's fascinating with what you do, but you just look at everything that possibly could go wrong and let's just build a procedure around it. Or let's try to mitigate those risks. That's really what security process and thinking is. And also there's a lot of nuance that comes into it because there's some things I've talked about with you I would have never even thought of. But it happens.
Oh, it happens. And when we look at security, we look at it as an onion. You peel back the onion. And there's not one product in security that you say, oh, I have cameras, I have alarms, I have access control, I have trained, I have guards. Another falsehood is guards, being able to protect your location to the point that you think they should. It's not one of those. It's the layers of security that you put that reduces the chances. The outside of your grow facility is clean. There's a fence. There's lighting. There's cameras on the walls. There's an alarm system. There's all of these components that someone just goes, and this is haven't done this for 25 years. I'm not trying to get the bad guy not to rob or break into somewhere. I just want them to go somewhere else to do.
Yes. You're not trying to solve the reason for crime. You're just trying to deter from this exact location.
Right.
That's somebody else's problem.
Right. Yeah,
Very stoic of you, Tony.
Right. I don't want them to break the window. So what do I do? How do I prevent them from breaking the window?
I love that. This is a great show. This is a great roll up. So like starting with a culture of honesty and disseminating that, like having a very frank and honest conversation about the risks with your employees and the organization that's there. Focusing on where your assets are the strongest, your storage room. And protecting that in a very holistic manner. Talking about the risks of manufacturing facilities and the exposures, not just security, but like safety for your employees, your products, and all those. And not even just manufacturing, but cultivation as well. And when your product leaves the store or the facility en route, there's security things on that. So these are all fairly obvious low-hanging fruit for our viewers today to like give a lot more mind to, and like thinking about the safety of your organization and the security of your organization and your people and the well-being of your business. So, and I'm sure your insurance adjuster will love you for this as well. But that's another show coming up in a few weeks. We'll have some insurance guys on. But for this, Tony, I super appreciate you being on today. How could people, if they haven't run into you at one of the 1,000 events that you go through, how do people connect with you and Sapphire?
So you can reach us at sapphirerisk.com. My name is Tony Gallo. Again, you can reach me at tgallo@sapphirerisk.com. And a lot of times we're more than willing to answer questions that you have. We don't charge you for those questions. And if you ever need a recommendation or some sort of advice, by all means, give us a call.
Tony, thank you for your consummate commitment to this industry and making it a safer and better place for all involved. So thanks for all this. I appreciate you having on today. Thanks for sharing some knowledge with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.